Hello there, my name is Bill and this is 0 to 60 Motoring. I'm sat in a 2017 Mazda CX5. Now a little bit of 0 to 60 Motoring before I carry on with this review. 0 to 60 Motoring gives you trusted and unbiased car advice such that we make your car ownership journey easy. So if you want to purchase a car, you can literally check out on our YouTube channel or Facebook page. We have prepared a gazillion of reviews to make your work easy. So stay around until the end of this video if you are a Mazda fan or you want to purchase a Mazda CX5. 2017 Mazda CX5 Sport review. When last I reviewed the Subaru Forester, many people were asking me about the comparison of this car versus a Subaru Forester. So I'm very excited actually to bring you this review. The Mazda CX5 actually made its debut back in 2012. That was the first generation. It was called actually the KE series. This is the second generation which rolled out of the production line in 2017. It's called the KF variant actually. And the Mazda CX5, when it actually started gaining traction in the Kenyan market a few years ago, it actually became a best seller actually, easily outgunning the class leader, the traditional stalwarts of the class. The crossover family, actually the crossover segment, is a highly crowded and competitive segment. In this class, the Mazda CX5 actually sits at the same table with cars like the Honda CR-V, the Toyota RAV4, the Mitsubishi Outlander, the Nissan X-Trail, the Volkswagen Tiguan, something like Suzuki Grand Vitara. And you can see if a Mazda CX5 is managing that competition, it has something that it is bringing on the table. And actually another competitor I forgot to mention is the Subaru Forester SJ series. Now how does this Mazda CX5 stack up against the competitors? In recent times, the Mazda CX5 actually has managed to topple off the traditional stalwarts in this class, that is the Toyota RAV4 and the Honda CR-V. In this class currently, the leaders are actually, let me say it's a threesome that is involving this Mazda CX5, the Nissan X-Trail, and something like the Subaru Forester SJ series. Those are the best sellers at the moment, especially when I'm looking at the Kenyan market. So let's talk the engines and the gearboxes in the 2017 Mazda CX5. Now the Mazda CX5, let me put it this way, Mazda actually has an engine for everyone. For example, for the 2017 Mazda CX5, there are 3 engine flavors. At the base or the bottom level, you have a 2000cc naturally aspirated petrol engine, and that is the car I'm driving. After the 2000cc naturally aspirated petrol, we have a 2.5 liter petrol. It's also a 4-cylinder and it's also naturally aspirated. And then next we have a 2.2 liter, that is the turbo diesel flavor. Those are the 3 engine options you are getting, especially when purchasing a 2017 Mazda CX5. Of course, later on in 2019, actually, when Mazda realized that people wanted a turbocharged petrol, they incorporated, they borrowed a 2.5 liter turbo from the CX9. So if you'll be purchasing a Mazda CX5 from 2019, it's good learning that you'll have 4 engine flavors to pick from: 2 liter, 2.5 naturally aspirated petrols, 2.2 turbo diesel, and then the top of the range will be a 2.5 liter turbocharged petrol. Now for this one, 2000cc naturally aspirated petrol engine, it's married to a 6-speed automatic transmission which sends drive to the front wheels only. When you step up to the 2.5 liter or the 2.2 liter turbo diesel, you can also find them with a front wheel drive train, or they are also offered with a 4-wheel drive. We normally call it actually an all-wheel drive system. So apart from the 6-speed automatic transmission, if you like taking matters into your own hands, something which can be good when it comes to cars, the CX5 is also offered with a 6-speed manual transmission for all the engines I've mentioned. Apart from the 2.5 petrol, the diesel can be found with a 6-speed manual, And this one, the 2-liter, can also be found with the 6-speed manual transmission. Now, based on my driving experience of the 3 engines, I'll say that if you're going for this 2000cc natural aspirated petrol engine, the best gearbox is actually a manual transmission. That way you can at least dictate the car. You can dictate the car, the gear you want that car to roll in, because the 6-speed here can actually at times be struggling. When the first generation Mazda CX5 started gaining traction in the Kenyan market, the selling point of the Mazda CX5 was basically the looks. It's actually a very appealing product to look at. In yesteryears, previous years before the Mazda CX5 came into the Kenyan market, most of the women used to go for the Toyota Harrier. That is why it was called Harrier, Wamama wa Harrier. But currently, most women are actually going for the Mazda CX5, and then it's changing the trend. But then it's not a bad thing for even a man having a CX5, because it is actually a very good car to drive. Now, when you're looking at this car from the face, this face is inspired by Mazda's code or soul of motion design language, and that's why you'll be finding that all Mazda cars actually have a similar face. For example, let's start with this design up front here. The grille for the 2017 version has been made somewhat bigger and aggressive, and then you have this big Mazda logo here. You also have this chrome finish that runs from this end of this headlamp to the other side, of course, to improve the overall aesthetics of this car. Good thing with this car also, it comes with these LED daytime running lamps, which have daytime headlamps, which have daytime running lights as standard. They also look pretty good. So when you're looking at this car from the face, actually a while back I parked the Mazda CX5 side by side with a Mitsubishi Outlander and a Nissan X-Trail, and I asked the kid between the 3 cars which is the best looking, and it was actually a very easy choice for them to make. And because kids are very honest, they said the Mazda CX5 looks better, so I'm not going to go against them. It's actually a curvaceous product if you look at it, and this car is slightly smaller matter size than the previous generation, but it's something negligible you'll not realize. The roof here has been made somewhat sloping to the rear side, which of course will eat into the boot space, but it improves the overall design of this car. This car actually comes with 19-inch alloy wheels. They actually look good, and they are filling these wheel arches pretty well. And if you want to go the aftermarket way, this car actually allows even 20-inch wheels to be fitted here, but I think 19-inch are actually pretty good, and they actually have a very good amount of rubber to absorb shock when it comes to knocking at the potholes. So from the side profile, it's actually a curvaceous product. You also have these chrome finishes here. How about the rear profile? The rear of this 2017 CX5 is also pretty good looking. It's actually pleasing to look at. And when you're looking at this car versus the previous generation, Mazda of course improved the looks. They brought in smaller tail lights, because you can see these tail lights here are somewhat smaller, but you have this circle lighting pattern, which actually gives this car pretty an appealing look. You have this Sky Active technology badge here. Of course, this is a petrol version, that's why you don't see Sky Active D. And then on this other side, you have this CX5 badge here, and then that is all you can tell from the design of this car. And if I was to rank cars in this segment on how they look like, this will actually be a class leader when it comes to exterior aesthetics in the mid-size crossover family. It's time for a cabin tour for this 2017 Mazda CX5. Because this is a different generation of the Mazda CX5, you are going to note very many changes coming from the previous generation. Because the steering wheel here, the design is a little bit different, the center console is also different, because Mazda actually want to tick that aesthetics box. Now, let's start with this center console here. You have this, it's actually a 6.5-inch infotainment screen, which is very small, but then it sprouts from this dashboard. It has a bunch of functionalities from music, Bluetooth, you can access your phone book from this place. This middle center console has been raised from the previous generation, of course, to improve the accessibility of this gear knob from the driver's position. That should make sense for a manual transmission, but then it's not a bad thing for even an automatic gearbox. Now you have this sport driving mode here, of course, if you want to spice up things, especially when you're on the highway and you need that overtaking grunt. The electronic parking brake still carries on from the previous generation. You have these knobs here which will help you control the infotainment screen, because this one is actually, it's safer controlling the infotainment screen from this center console when driving instead of reaching out to this infotainment screen. Matters accommodation wise, from this place you have two cup holders here, and then in this glove compartment you also have two USB ports and an auxiliary port actually. So when I'm looking at this car, Mazda tried to improve the functionality of this car up front here, how the cabin looks like, to make it more user friendly actually. Now the Mazda CX5 also packs a healthy list of driver assistant features. Now from this driving position, you have cruise control settings on the right side of the steering wheel. You have a traction control button here. You have a lane departure warning in case you are veering off from your lane. The car should be able to warn you. You have a i-stop, of course, to improve your gas mileage, especially when you are in traffic. And this car also has a rear vehicle monitoring system that warns you of any of your surroundings, especially when you want to switch lanes. Another cool feature for this CX5 is that it comes with this heads-up display function, which means that when you're on the highway, you don't need to look at the cluster readings here, because you can just keep your eyes on the road and then you can easily read your speed from this heads-up display. So when I'm looking at the execution of this car, while this is a base model, of course when you are stepping up to the Grand Touring, you are going to have a very big list of the bells and whistles, including a sunroof here. You're going to have leather seats with electronic adjustability. You're going to have something like a 10-speaker Bose sound system. But then, even for the base model, Mazda is still generous. It gives you a bunch of features to play with. When I'm looking at a base model Mazda CX5 in comparison to something like a Honda CR-V, a Mitsubishi Outlander, or something at Toyota RAV4, this car will actually outgun and outperform them when it comes to the features it packs. The other ones are aforementioned are actually very basic, bland, and uninspiring to look at. For you to get the most out of those cars, you have to step up to the highest trim levels. So that makes Mazda very generous actually, if you ask me. How about accommodation? Most probably when you're purchasing a Mazda CX5 or any crossover, you are interested in spacing. Is it accommodative? Now from my driver's position, this is the amount of headroom I have. Of course, it's not a class leading headroom, but for a person who is not short and who is not tall, I don't have any problem with this headroom. The knee room is also plenty accommodative, because you can adjust this seat backwards and then it's easy finding your driving position. That still applies to the co-driver's seat here. Now let's see what the second row seats have for us. Now when I'm looking at this second row seat, I'll still be comfortable in this position, because the amount of headroom is still pretty decent, and the amount of knee room is also pretty good. Of course, if the person up front here is a tall driver, will have adjusted the seat backwards, the space is going to be limited, but that is how most cars in this segment are, unless you're getting something like the Honda CR-V, which is the most spacious car in this segment. And good thing with this Mazda CX5, I have realized, in most cars for this second seat you're finding two cup holders here, but Mazda don't want your kids to fight for charging ports, or you fight for charging ports in this center console. They are actually very generous. They have given you two USB ports in this center console for your kids to enjoy charging their phones, especially when you are doing long distance travels. How about the boot space? Let's see what the CX5 has for us matters the trunk space. Of course, the boot is manually adjusted for this base model. This is the amount of boot space you have for this 2017 CX5. Of course, it's not as cavernous as something like a Honda CR-V, Actually, it's still less than what you are finding in something like Toyota RAV4. But then, should you find the Mazda CX5 are not practical, that means you should step up to something bigger, like a Mazda CX8, which I've already reviewed. You can check it on the channel. So in case this room is less than what you want, you can easily lower these rear seats. Now, but because I have a child seat in position, I'm not going to show you how you are going to access to lower the seats, but you are going to use these levers here to lower the seats. So that is how you're going to make the Mazda CX5 more accommodative. Behind the wheel of this 2017 Mazda CX5 petrol, the power output for this motor is rated at around 160 brake horsepower and 200 actually plain Newton meters of torque. Now those are not let me say those are not very good numbers for this size of a car, but it can easily get to speeds because the 0 to 60 time or 0 to 100 kilometers per hour by the manufacturer is 10.2 seconds, which may not be that decent, but it's not a problem still, because when you are looking at cars like Subaru Forester SJ5, the 0 to 100 km per hour is around 11.5 seconds. That is not impressive. So when I'm behind the wheel of this car, whatever the driving feel, the steering wheel is actually dead accurate, and then the car of course is loud because you really have to push this 2000cc for it to make let me say a good amount of grunt to move this car. Good thing with this car, you have a sports mode down here. Once you flick the car into sports mode, it becomes a little bit loud because it's trying to hold two gears for long, and then it's trying to keep the RPMs high. So if you want to get the best out of this car, especially for long distance travels, you have to push it. You have to use the sports driving mode. That is when you are going to, let me say, get a little bit of thrill, because in its plain form, when it's actually loaded, you have 5 passengers and maybe some luggage in the boot, it may struggle, especially when it comes to hilly terrains. So we want to test the 0 to 60, 0 to 100 of this petrol CX5. Now this car actually has a sports mode, and actually I'm going to flick it into sports mode so that I am going to know whether this sports mode will actually spice things up. Last time when I was at this location, I managed 7.8 with the Subaru Forester XT. So I'm going to see whether this car can hold a candle against a Subaru Forester XT. 3, 2, 1. Alright, that is 3, that is 4, that's gear number 5, that is 6. Alright, that is pretty impressive. That is 100. Let's see where it will go. That is 110, 120, 130, 140. Of course, it has not done it pretty well like something like a Subaru Forester, but I'm really grateful it has made it way there. Of the 3 engine flavors, that is the 2000cc petrol, the 2500cc petrol, and the 2.2 liter turbo diesel. Of course, the best engine to have, if you are a spirited driver, you want something that is gonna pin into your seat, is the turbo diesel, because it has a very good kick that pins you into your seat. Of course, this is this 2000cc. You've seen the 0 to 60. It's actually pretty good. It can also get you where you are going. But if you want to spice up things, it's better getting the 2.5 liter. While it's thirstier, it's more reliable than the diesel, and it's actually better to drive than this 2000cc. Now, because this car is at the same price range with the Subaru Forester, how does it compare with the Subaru Forester when it comes to the driving dynamics? That is a question I normally get plenty of the time. Now, this 2000cc, it's actually faster than the Subaru Forester SJ5, because the Subaru Forester SJ5 takes like 2 days getting to 100 kilometers per hour. A very slow car, and it's not fun to drive. But when I'm looking at the Subaru Forester XT, that is the SJG, There is no CX5, whether it's the 2.2 diesel, whether it's the 2.5 liter petrol, or whether it's this 2000cc, regardless of whether you have a sports mode. There is no CX5 that can hold a candle to a Subaru Forester XT, especially when it comes to the acceleration capability. But when I'm looking at this car versus something like a Nissan X-Trail, a Mitsubishi Outlander, something like a Honda CR-V, this car will check your box if you want something that is fun to drive. Actually, this car actually gets corners better than even a Subaru Forester. So that is the only honest analysis on how this car stacks up against the competition. That is the Japanese competition when it comes to the driving dynamics. The 2000cc petrol engine you're getting up front here, it's the same engine you're finding in something like a Mazda Xela or the Mazda Tenza. So people have been asking me if this is the same engine I'm getting, you are finding in the Mazda Xela or the Mazda Tenza, why is it that it's somewhat lazy or lackluster or even sluggish when it comes to the CX5? It's pretty simple. In the Mazda Xela, you have what I'll say it's called a power to weight ratio advantage. Because the Mazda Xela it's lighter than this one, the 2000cc petrol engine works pretty fine in that car. Actually, even in the Mazda Tenza. But for a Mazda CX5 and the Tenza, they are somewhat heavier than the Xela. That's why the best engines that to have is the 2.5 liter or the diesel flavor. For the Xela, the 2 liter version is actually pretty good. So that's why you'll be finding that someone has a 2000cc Mazda Xela, and you'll find that their car is more responsive than your Mazda Tenza 2 liter or your Mazda CX5. If you want to get the best out of this car, of course you have to pin it hard. You have to press the gas pedal pretty hard. Of course that is a liability when it comes to fuel economy. So most probably when you're purchasing this car, you want to know what is the fuel economy, because these days the economy is in the low and then the figures, petrol prices are on the rise. When you are driving this car without any load, let me say you are like 2 people in the car and then you are driving it conservatively, you should be expecting figures in the region of 11 to 12 kilometers per liter. But then when doing long travels and then the car is loaded, and when you make a mistake of flicking it into sports mode, it becomes a little bit thirsty, and in that case you're going to average like 9 to 10 kilometers per liter. That is when the car is loaded and you're trying to push it a little bit hard. So if you want the best fuel figures in a CX5, they are only found in let me say in the diesel flavor, because the diesel flavor can actually give you like 14 kilometers per liter. That is realistic fuel figures. Of course the manufacturer quotes something like 18-19 kilometers per liter. But if you don't want a diesel car, because sometimes a diesel can be troublesome, actually it can make you lose your hairline or make you lose your weight, you can get the 2.5 liter, which actually has very good power ratings, but it's very thirsty. In that case, my interaction with it, I've been getting around 9 kilometers per liter with that 2.5 liter petrol. Of course I normally gun it like it's stolen, so for an average driver you should be getting better fuel figures. Now because we've talked about the engine flavors, most probably you are interested in the reliability of this Mazda CX5. I've been playing with a Mazda CX5 diesel for quite some time now, and then while that car has a very good amount of power, you need to do some modifications so that you can easily live with it. That is not the case for the petrol flavor. Mazda actually has an engine for everyone. Those people who want a reliability and fuel economy in one package will consider this 2000cc petrol engine. Those who want power and reliability in another cocktail, they'll consider the 2.5 liter. Those who want fuel economy and power in another package, they're considering the diesel flavor. So if you want a reliable Mazda CX5, the best bets are normally the petrols. Of course the diesels, if you know how to live with them, they can also be good. And if you want to purchase a diesel, I've already done a maintenance video which will help you know how to live with a Mazda CX5 diesel. Now the petrol ones are actually pretty simple to live with. You just service them religiously from interval to interval and they are not going to skip a bit. Now, the reason I'm saying this CX5 actually petrol is easily among the class leaders when it comes to reliability. You have a very simple engine to live with here, which has no problem whatsoever, and because Mazda makes actually the best drivetrains and a gearbox, because this car comes with a 6-speed automatic or a 6-speed manual transmission. Unlike most cars in the segment, like the Nissan X-Trail, the Toyota RAV4, the likes of Subaru Forester SJ, they are coming with a CVT gearbox. So when you're looking at the gearbox strength, actually Mazda easily has the best gearbox in the class. So should you buy this CX5? The price range for a 2-liter version of the CX5 2017 variant plays around 3.4 to 3.6 million shillings. The 2.5 liter is actually slightly expensive because it attracts higher duties. It's at 3.8 to 3.9 million shillings. The diesel flavor is actually cheaper because it goes for around 3.1, 3.2 million shillings. Of course, it depends on the specifications and the grade of the car. Now, when I'm looking at this car versus cars you can get at 3.2, 3.4 million, I'm looking at a Honda CR-V, I'm looking at a Mitsubishi Outlander. It's also possible getting a Toyota Harrier at 3.5 million shillings, but nothing, and you can actually also get something like a Subaru Forester XT or the non-turbo one. When I'm looking at this car versus all the cars I've mentioned, this car is the best to drive. Do not confuse that with power. Of course, I know Forester people, this may not sit well with the Forester people, but then this car is better to drive than a Subaru Forester. But of course, the Subaru Forester is way quicker than all the engine flavors in the Mazda CX5. This car, when you are throwing it into the corners, it actually behaves pretty well. And then when you are looking at the overall design of this car matters looks, it's actually a class leader. So I think at 3.1, 3.2 million, this is a lot of car for that money actually, considering what this car gives you and versus what the competition gives you. So the CX5 is going to check your boxes. If you want something that is reliable, something that is fun to drive, of course, when you step up to the bigger engines, something that is attractive, because this car has class leading looks. Yeah, those are the things, those are the main strengths of this 2017 Mazda CX5. I think this review will give you a little bit of insights about the Mazda CX5 and how it stacks against the competition. I've already reviewed something like a Subaru Forester, which plays in this segment and at the same price tag, so you can actually check it on the channel. Alright guys, see you on the next one.